in progress. Wunderbar, sagt sie mir.
That is absolutely right. Recording in progress. Nikolai, I'm very happy that I'm having you here today. And it took a few weeks, but I think we were both eager to make this happen. So I'm happy that you have time today, and welcome.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure.
What I normally do is ask, give a short introduction about yourself, and then we dive right into you.
All right. Yeah, so I'm a founder and CEO of Synapticon, which is a German headquartered company focusing on motion control technology and safety technology directed at robotics and advanced machinery. So we're revolutionizing basically the point of motion, integrating a lot of discrete components that usually need to be sourced from all different kinds of vendors, and which are usually super inefficient and bulky and have a decade-long heritage in industry, state of the art. And yeah, we're basically making these components disappear by replacing them with a very small piece of electronics that basically hides at the point of motion. So wherever something moves in the robot or the machine, so typically a servo motor, they were basically hiding in the so far empty space with these electronics. And yeah, as I said, make a lot of hardware disappear, make everything more efficient, more flexible, allow to build better machines and robots faster, effectively with that. It's a broader product portfolio meantime, but that's the core of what we do.
Thanks. And also, yeah, giving already some insight in the company. But at the beginning, I'm always very interested in the person behind the company, behind the brand. And yeah, if you don't mind, let's go back and maybe you can tell me a little about your upbringing and the kind of environment that you grew up. I'm always very interested in that because sometimes it shows what comes afterwards.
Yeah. Very interesting question that is rarely asked, actually, when it's about the bio to start that early. So I was born in Baden-Württemberg to basically a family of artists. My father, he studied at Stuttgart Art University, basically free art, and was a comparably famous package designer in the end. So I was basically growing up in advertisement agencies and in the agency of my dad. So yeah, besides being a free artist, he got into advertisement and all different kinds of things, and was a quite well-known person there. And my mom was supporting the business as well. So at a very early stage or early age, I wanted to say, I've been walking around offices and was living in the business to a degree. It was basically eating, sleeping, drinking, marketing, if you will. And then in the leisure time, often a lot of free art and so on, like going to galleries around Europe, often needing to, go to an art gallery, for example, when I wanted to go to a water park somewhere in Southern, for example. So it was also quite a struggle for periods to be always on the go in the mission of my parents. Anyhow, that probably, made me soak up entrepreneurship in a small scale. Several friends of my parents have been entrepreneurs with larger companies. My godfather had a company with like 150 people in Cologne. And these were all, I think, early inspirations of later becoming an entrepreneur myself. Since I was a lot on the go with them, so I think at the age when I went to school, I think I had seen already a couple more corners of the world and more things than maybe an average child sees, and that gave me a struggle with school. So my relationship with school was always a problem. I always felt like they're putting me there to a prison, and they make me do unnecessary stuff in a way like the world isn't like you tell me it is here. I've seen it out there. I've been there, done that, so to say. So don't tell me this is preparing me for real life. So I was kind of under challenged, and underwhelmed by what school was, and I felt like I'm wasting my time all the time in a really bad way. So I was a really bad student up until the point when I went to the last 3 years, like, how would you call this, a technisches Gymnasium? And it's like I think in the US it would be like a college, basically, where you already focus on some more some subjects basically. So it was first time when I got in touch with engineering, and the teachers there were all experienced folks from industry. And so these were people who decided to become teachers after they had a different career. That made a big difference. So I had 3 last positive years in school, and maybe that was also a push towards engineering and technology for me. Coming out of my kind of artist and marketing, family context. And yeah, first kind of I wanted to study industrial design, integral design. That's combining design and technology to a degree. And I started my you needed to have an internship for these studies. 9-month practical internship in prototype building, basically. So I searched a company where I could do this, and kind of experienced this job firsthand, and happened to find a mentor there in the company, who was a cool guy, and constantly reflected with me on that journey and so on, and basically gave me firsthand insight into this job. And it happened that after a couple of weeks, or was it months, I don't know anymore, we had a conversation where he was very frustrated about his job, and I slowly learned about what this job means, and I realized it's not really about crafting the products from the ground up. It's usually these designers, they just put a nice envelope around something that already exists. And then he had a depressed day and said, "Boy, don't do this mistake. Learn something solid. Do something real." Lern etwas Gescheites in Swabian. And basically the day after I said, okay, I'm leaving. I wrote myself into engineering science at University of Bayreuth. So I changed my course quite spontaneously into engineering. And yeah, then a few weeks after, started studying engineering science in Bayreuth University, which was one of 2 universities at the time that offered a bachelor
Interesting.
program. And I wanted to have a bachelor because I wanted to have the choice after a couple of years, what else to do. I couldn't imagine studying the same thing for 4 to 5 years. I wanted to have a shorter thing and then be flexible for the end of the studies. That's why I was looking for that. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, it seems like, yeah, it's quite different from what I imagined. And I think this is one of the reasons why I have this
really?
podcast. Yeah. And it's nice to see that something that is totally different from the upbringing, right? This is something that inspires me also, because every now and then it is a person, or it's a book or a movie or a situation that inspires you, but sometimes it's just intrinsic motivation. Some people are interested in different things, right? And having parents that are somehow in the art world or art, you were saying agency marketing. This is very different from having engineers as parents, or an uncle or a brother. And here, really, I would like to go 2 steps back, because we're already now at university level. How was that communicating this with your parents? Because especially as a father who has his own company, and you said he was kind of well known, there might be some expectations in having a son. And I don't know, maybe you can tell me a little about this. How was that for you? Where the expectation was, a support? Yeah,
I
please.
think it's a good question, because I think I experienced something very different than most children do when it comes to the expectation of their parents. My parents, they always strongly supported whatever I had in mind. So they entirely didn't care of which direction I'm going. And they, from an early age, they realized that I'm somehow more interested in cables and buttons than in paintings and whatever. So they were often joking about me, that I'm always dismantling everything, and had a strong interest in technology all the time. I was not, painting pictures. I was designing cars basically, and inventing, I don't know, cars that could drive on water or whatever, when painting pictures and stuff like that. So I think they probably realized from an early time that I'm maybe interested in a couple other things than the world at home was offering. I mean, there were some relations to that. My dad liked to work on old cars, renovating them. He was I think he had like 54 cars in his life or so, that he that he just played with, and I think he was building 14 houses, most of them with his own hands, as much as he could do. He was renovating a ship, basically it's a steel barcasse, 13 meters long. It was an old thing that he bought somewhere in the Netherlands, I think, and brought
Mm.
southern Germany on the Neckar, and then made like a Oriental Express style thing out of it. So he always crafted something, and I mean, this was not high tech, right? But building stuff was around me, and yeah, my grandfather, he was a bit more on the engineering side, and then
Mm.
he bought me, electronics kits to play with, and um, yeah, the office of my parents was in Stuttgart in an office center where companies like Sun Microsystems, and like computer companies were also located. So the neighborhood was quite technical. And I remember I loved it to jump into the trash containers and take out electronic parts and collect all these things that these companies were throwing away, and just had a pile of that stuff at home, and played with these
Nice.
circuit boards and I don't know whatever parts I found from whatever, like mainframe computers and stuff like that. That was just exciting, and yeah, was building quote unquote robots in my room at home already. So yeah, coming back to your question, they saw where I was going, and they were always quite supportive. I was quite lucky, maybe.
Yeah, because I'm a young father myself, and I try to understand how my kid is thinking. I mean, she's very young now, but there's so many interests that I have, right? And so on the technology side, but also, as you said, art and architecture and these kind of things. So,
Mm.
but for me, it was important because sometimes you do have expectations, and I do think that I have expectations too, right? But putting putting yourself not in the center of everything, so and putting herself her or you in the center and says, okay, what are you interested in,
Mm.
what do you would like to do, and how
Yeah,
can I support whatever that might be. And I think this is a lesson I'm one of the reasons why I have this podcast, right? To better understand how people like you grew up and what kind of environment is necessary to. You were mentioning, for example, the grandfather with buying this kind of kits, right? So this is a
mm.
pattern I heard a few times over 50 episodes, and so enabling is, I think, one of the buzzwords here.
Yes,
Enabling and supporting and contributing and just offering a very big buffet of things that are out there. You were saying coming to
exactly.
school. Mm.
Well, not overwhelming. I remember my struggle of getting my first personal computer. Uh, a friend of mine, so that was the wish that I get a PC, back at the early 90s, basically, that I had, and I was constantly bugging my parents to buy me one. And so this was at a time where it was not so usual yet to have a computer at home, and it was even not so usual yet to have it in the office.
Mm.
At least not in this industry that they operated in. Later, it became very predominant, of course, to
Yeah, funny.
desktop publishing and stuff like this. But yeah, at least the area where they were in, this was done with paper and stuff. Um, and then a friend of mine who wasn't really interested in computers, he just got one. His parents just bought him one, and I was freaking out. I said, "Look, he's not interested in that stuff. I'm daring for it, kind of, or starving for it, and you don't get me one." And then it was an intensive half a year, and then I think I managed to get one, and that was a breakthrough moment. So maybe also that is important, that you not always, you're just overloaded by your parents with everything that you um, indicate you're interested in, or maybe not even be interested in. When you mentioned this buffet of things, I think to go through a certain struggle to get something maybe is even stronger to support your direction into something. Uh, I remember that I went on, and then at some point I put to my mind that I need a mobile phone, when it was absolutely not normal for children to have mobile phones. Adult people didn't all have mobile phones, right? So this was, I don't know when this was then, mid 96, 97, maybe 98, something like
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
that. I'm 41 now,
Okay,
so
so we same
born in
age.
83, yeah.
Yes.
And and then there was the same struggle, and I was, troubling them to get me a mobile phone. And then I used my pocket money, to buy myself like a mobile modem and a computer, and took this with me to school. So I was in 98, 99, I was mobile connected with my computer in school.
This is insane.
And I had one of these, personal digital assistants from the Cassiopeia. Casio had these, black and white PDAs where you could also kind of, the smartphones weren't invented back then. Yeah, even Nokia didn't have some. And yeah, and I was so fascinated in these stuff and wanted to use these things. And I took them to school and troubled my teachers to allow me to write my stuff in school with that, which was not normal. And some teachers actually allowed it to happen, up to the point where there was a how do you call this, like a when you're tested, you need to write essays, right? For example, in German. And I said, look, teacher, you complain about my handwriting. You cannot read my handwriting. So why don't you let me write this now with my PDA here? And I'm sending an email after I'm done to you. And she accepted that. While some other teachers were going crazy with me, like, and yeah, talking about support of children's aims and ambitions, that maybe goes beyond your parents. You need to find mentors who, yeah, how to say, respond to your struggle and give you success experiences. I think that's also important besides just having the infrastructure.
I think this is a great example, and I think it's really, really funny because I remember that my brother and his friend, they were one of the first few ones, because they were working, they were working already, age of 14, 15, 16. We were all working, and so we had money, and
Yeah,
these guys thought it would be awesome to have a mobile phone. So I remember that
yeah.
there were the very few. I remember that they were walking around with a mobile phone. Do you think this email still exists somewhere?
Ooh, that'll be a hard mission, but I can see what I can do. I don't know. I need to
But I
find
mean,
out.
it would be really funny because
Yeah,
it would be almost 30 years now, right? So
true.
in a few years, it would be 30 years. And having this email from a very young
Oh yeah,
Nikolai, who was able to convince his teacher that it would be a good idea actually to get an email instead of a written paper. And I really
true.
can see the situation where you see someone who is thinks, okay, there's no harm in it, right? And as long as it's working, and why not? Why should I not? And then I can see other teachers going furious, like, why do you think you're so special? And why do you think this should be
Do it
allowed? Everyone would
differently.
do
Yeah,
it. And so it's
exactly. Yeah,
interesting to see that, yeah. So
yeah.
and also the episode of going through struggle. You're
Mhm.
absolutely right. This is something that needs to be learned and can rarely be taught. So it needs to be felt
Yeah,
and experienced. So thank you for sharing this. I think this is very important for young founders or older founders who are thinking about founding a company. That struggle is part of the journey. There
yeah.
is no way around it.
As you say, what does prepare you to become an entrepreneur or a successful entrepreneur? Resilience is, of course, among the key properties you need to have. And I think these early struggles, like my struggle with school, yeah, and with some teachers and some, how to say, other students, who, I mean, I was a strange guy, right? So got a lot of backlash from the school community. Luckily, had one friend who was similar, but everyone else was very different. So a lot of social struggle, so to say, also while I had the struggle with school. And I think that was a first long and strong episode of exercising resilience and, remaining or kind of finding a way to keep your optimism, even that the world and your life is actually shit. So and this I somehow managed, and that's something, but people often tell me today that they often cannot believe how resilient I am facing trouble. They feel it, sometimes calling me a psychopath, not basically not sensing the danger, not sensing the trouble. Always be able to sleep calmly at night, no matter if the world is falling apart or not. And for me, it's natural somehow, and I think these early experiences, they also contribute to such training.
Mm.
Mm.
Um, um, I envy you because this is something I'm a very emotional person, so that means I can be very happy, but I can be very sad and very angry as well. And one of the key points in the last few years, I'm working very hard on that because, as you said, this is a lesson that you need to go through and that you need to, because work for me never was a big topic. I always worked, but there's a difference in just the endurance to just go through, but going after your goals is different than just doing someone else's work, because then
Mm.
there's your heart involved. I couldn't care less for the other work I was doing. So I was not as emotionally involved. So it was easier for me to endure. But now
Mm.
when I would like to achieve something, it's much harder to go through because I cannot believe that the universe is not helping me here or there, right? Because
Yeah.
it's so obvious that this is the great mission. And you're absolutely right. If you manage to keep your emotions here in place and to remember yourself that there's a bigger goal that needs to be achieved, yeah, strong lesson here. I thank you very much for going in depth here and sharing this struggle. And yeah, maybe we can come back to you going to university and becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought it was a great idea. I visited this university. It was cool. Basically, yeah, they got accepted. I think that wasn't too hard at Bayreuth University because it's a uni that is mostly known for economics and law and geoscience, and the engineering faculties are very small ones actually. But
Mm.
extremely well equipped university. Like everything is new,
Mm.
everything is how to say there, so plentiful of resources and so on. But somehow I was quickly under challenged again. Like I was in the, how do you call this? When you choose the subjects um, for your final exams in school, Leistungskurs in German, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
I had math, Leistungskurs, even that I was always struggling with math. Actually, in the last 2 years, I decided to, fully go into it, and that worked out quite well. And
Nice.
we were one of few schools in Baden-Württemberg where computer algebra systems were used. So we worked with Maple, that's a computer algebra system, and did quite advanced math then in this, how to say, performance course, Leistungskurs. And then when I came to university, kind of there was a reset. So, for example, math was important in engineering. We went back, I felt like several years, and didn't use these tools. And it was a similar experience like in the beginning in school. Kind of, I felt, and I think I was more advanced, and then I needed to wait for the studies to catch up, basically, at least in several subjects. Others were interesting, of course. And then I first entertained myself with, I don't know, I found some programs where you could participate in a business plan, a competition, and I invented a company, or I used a company, a concept that I had already entertained a couple of years during school with a couple of friends. And I said, okay, now I write a business plan for that business that we were building for a couple of years, and apply for this business plan competition, just for entertainment, and wasting my time then with other things, and ultimately finding the Formula Student team at the university during my first year. Like Formula SAE, it's called in some countries, Formula Student in Europe mostly. So where the students are building race cars from scratch and compete in a standardized competition. So there's a regulation that you need to comply with, and then you can compete in several international events. And there was just a new team started in Bayreuth, and I became one of the first members, and then totally lost myself into that for 3 years. And went to the extreme. So basically, like literally be there in the lab day and night in the end. When when there were parties at the university, we went over, grabbed a beer, went back to the lab. Um, uh, Literally working through many nights and totally wasting ourselves. But it was great. You needed to acquire the sponsors, so there was no money from the university for that. You needed to hire people that needed to work for free for you, right? Because it was all voluntary. And yeah, you needed to compete with much more experienced teams that had many years of heritage in developing these cars. And yeah, this was, I mean, in the end, quite successful in the second year, winning several special awards, and in the third year being a top 5 car in the German competition, for example. Um, and it was just, yeah, the greatest experience that you can have as a mechanical engineer, at least, right? My studies were quite mechanical focused, and I added myself some electronics stuff in terms of my interests, and I built up the electronics team in that team as well. So yeah, and this went so far that I completely ignored my studies. So I just didn't go to any lecture anymore. I only went to the tests in the end, tried to get my points together, and that didn't work out well in the end. So at some point, so in Bayreuth, you only, I think you can fail twice and then it's over. So
Mhm.
it's quite strict. And
So
I
this
didn't
is 2003, 4, 5, I guess.
2004. So I went to I was between school and the university. I went to the military. There was still military service, and
Mm,
I
sure.
chose to do full-blown military service instead of rejecting it. A decision that I also do not regret, actually. Um, 9 months of adventure. And then, yeah, it was like normally it would have been 3 years, but because I was lost into that project and I tried several things again, and I think I extended it to 4 um, before deciding, okay, look, now you smashed everything and you need to move on, you need to do something else. And I also didn't have the patience, to restart with studies or whatever. Would have had several possibilities. It was actually that the professors, they proactively offered to me to do a Härtefall, and they gave me, I don't know how to translate this. Basically, when you get a special further chance that is basically not normal protocol. But the professors, they knew me because I was leading this team, and it was a lot of marketing for the university as well, and they regret that guy who was contributing so much to this team was failing the studies. They didn't
Mhm.
want to see that. They didn't want to have this in the press also, basically, at any point. And then, but I kind of rejected that, so I didn't even take this further opportunity to continue my studies, and decided to go work somewhere as a design engineer, and started, yeah, practical working.
I think this is very brave. I mean, it's always easier to tell this kind of stories when you're a success. And as you are
Yeah,
now the
true.
founder and CEO of Synapticon, who's doing quite well, I think I can say that it's much easier to talk about this, especially as it turns out that uh, it was the right path for you, whatever that means, right? And
True.
but how
Could
was
have also
it?
failed. Yeah, of
But
course.
yeah, but how is that in 2004, 5, 6? How was, because then there was no Synapticon, right? So there was no CEO and founder title on LinkedIn. There was no.
That's
I saw
true.
you at the Humanoid Summit in San Francisco, so there was no international flair around Nikolai. So tell me, if you don't mind, how is that to cope with it? Was that where the resilience kicked in and says, I don't care, I can go further. So.
I think I was confident in that path, and not too concerned about not having a grade at a degree, because I knew of other entrepreneurs who went down that path, right, in one or the other way. Um, and it was kind of always clear for me that I will ultimately build my own company or several own companies. So I never had a doubt about that.
Mm.
The fact that I then started working for another company um, was that I felt like, okay, now directly out of the situation, founding something might not be the best choice. Let's experience a company from inside out. And yeah, just let's gain some practical experience after university. I mean, I knew companies, from my childhood and youth, but really working for one was something else.
Mm.
And also earning some money wasn't a bad idea, right? Also, I wouldn't have had a brilliant idea at hand at that time. So there was nothing that I was eager to start, but it was always clear, okay, at some point I will start it. And yeah, then I started working as a design engineer in that company, and quickly became a project manager and a sales, how to say, um, project manager with a sales role as well. So kind of, acquiring projects and then running these projects. It's a, how to say, it was a well-known kind of a well-established product design company where I was then, active mostly in medical devices and some defense applications and so on. Several interesting projects, experiencing product developments in all different kinds of areas from the inside, for companies like Airbus, and then medical device companies and stuff like that. So it was an interesting time, but in parallel, it became boring already again, right? So that is kind of a pattern that all the steps that I took of normal life, so to say, they quickly became boring, and I started a side activity, and that side activity turned out to be Synapticon after like 1.5, 2 years in that job. So after coming home in the evening, I started working on that company together with one of my co-founders who was still studying in University of Stuttgart, kind of some kind of computer science, so hardware-oriented computer science, electrical engineering of CPUs, basically. And yeah, we met at night basically, so worked until 2 a.m. On the just the first steps for that company, and then in the morning go to the normal job again and do the same every day during the week.
So this should be then around 2007, 2008, I guess.
So the kind of working on Synapticon was like end of 2009, early 2010.
So
Actually. I was in my job from 2008 until 2011, actually. Then.
Interesting. I'm asking this because, I mean, obviously 2008 was a very interesting time for being an entrepreneur or being or working in a company, and would have been very adventurous and very risk ignoring to start a company right in the financial crisis 2008. So happy to hear that you're not a psychopath and that you were managed to stay with the company long enough so you had a product, or we can dive into that in a few seconds. Here again, a pattern that I see is that working after hours, right? We were talking a little bit before this podcast and about the work-life balance that Generation Y or Generation whatever thinks is good, especially here in Europe. And one of the reasons why I would really like to push this idea of Europe not falling behind is one of the main reasons why I would like to push this idea of mine. And when you said hard work is not something that should be avoided at all costs. And it's also not something that you never should experience in your life, right? So it's obvious that having this kind of work and life for the entire period of your working life is definitely not something that is sustainable. And I think this is one of the main reasons why the younger generation, they see their parents and how they suffer and the consequences of having this kind of work. I have a mother-in-law who used to be a nurse for 45 years. So her entire life was being a nurse. And now I see the consequences of having this very hard labor job. So, but you're absolutely right. The hard times are necessary to forge one, to build this resilience. It's a training in the very end, right? And it helps you on so many other levels, so many aspects of your life. And you said that you and your co-founder, who was still studying, then in the evening or in the night, you were working on your projects. Was that something that was easy to you because you were so invested emotionally and you really wanted to do this? Because then this is what people actually mean, follow your passion, right? It means
it was totally natural.
Passion doesn't mean it's not hard. It's just hard, but it's less hard because you would like to do it so much, right?
Yeah. I don't know where this came from, but when I could work on the things that I kind of imagined myself and that I was interested in, there was never, the thought of, oh, this is hard work or whatever. I just couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to go to bed. I wanted to continue work on that stuff. That was already during the Formula student time like that. That it is not hard. I mean, it might be physically hard to your body, but it's psychologically not hard. It's the opposite. It's dopamine full send all the time.
Mm.
And I think that is something that goes wrong in society and with professional careers. I mean, you mentioned the nurse career. Of course, I mean, to be passionate about this deeply, 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 and not stopping to work, wanting to stop to work for in such a context is, of course, a totally different, how to say, ninja level than yeah, being an entrepreneur or an engineer and work on something exciting all the time. Because you're forced, right? You're forced by the need of the people that you work for and or the hospital that you work for. So, but anyhow, I think this is something that we're just not getting right as a society. This narrative about work, that work is something that consumes you, and that is not good for your health or so if you do it too much. It's just when there is negative stress, and I think this ultimately, of course, is not only a societal thing, it's also a company culture problem. I think we just have too many companies. I mean, that is maybe globally the same. Too many companies that don't put enough emphasis on being a place, yeah, where you can't wait to get in the morning, or cannot wait to get there in the morning, basically, and continue your work, right? Because it's so exciting. Workplaces are often something, yeah, uh, uh, not so nice. Work is not nice, basically. But to the other side, it's also a mindset issue, right? So also when I was working for other companies, where many probably hated their job, even I can imagine. Um, I was always passionate about it. Yeah, I went there and basically went to the managing directors and told them what I think the company should do, to become better and to do more, and I couldn't stop pushing them. For example, yeah, it was maybe annoying them even. And then when we were sitting in the cafe, others were kind of complaining about the crap that they had to deal with. And I always just saw solutions. I said, what are you complaining about? Why not try this? Why don't you do that? Um, so coming back to to children, basically, and what we teach them, and what we focus on as a society, I think this is where it starts and where it ends for Europe, kind of. And that's where we have to, where we have to start changing our minds, about this, yeah, work-life balance. No, you don't need a balance between work and life. You need to have some work that is your life, and then
Mm.
everything is good. Um, and of course, I mean, do as much as you think is right for you, but it shouldn't be negative. There shouldn't be any negative thing to work, basically. Yeah. And then also the Europe is, how to say, becoming less and less ambitious because people are focusing so much on their quality of life and then basically, yeah, how every day goes, and if they can be satisfied with their day and their week and their month and their year. Um, somehow, I don't feel like there are a lot of people in Europe that want to become rich. When I go to Asia, when I go to the US, that is kind of a number one driver, to become wealthier, to become richer, to become more powerful. These are all ambitions that have a negative touch in Europe, right? So if you're someone who wants to become rich, okay, yeah, that's a negative property, on a societal level. If you're someone, who wants to become powerful, that's a negative property, right? Um, and the paradox thing is that this isn't good for our society and for our economy in Europe, because ultimately this just, slows us down, makes us a place that is less and less successful because we want to be less and less successful. Yeah, being successful is not interesting anymore for us, and I think that, so yeah, we need to break the minds. Otherwise, I feel like there is no other way. We could talk about, risk awareness or risk adversity, of society or of investors and so on. Yes, these are all permutations of the same problem, I would say.
I think there's some memes or some Instagram sentences, posts that are flowing around about hard times create
Hmm.
hard men and hard men. Yeah, this.
Yes.
I mean, I think it contributes to this, and the level of, you were talking about this earlier. So the level of our well-being, of our daily life is so high, right? So there's not too much more to aim for. And you said, uh, sorry, excuse me, becoming rich is something that is you or you would like to have power, whatever that means, is something that people really, especially in Europe, look very strange at it, right? Or look very strange at you. But maybe if we frame it differently, because I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to become rich.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking, I had a Lamborghini Diablo on the wallpaper, but later on, I really understood what I'm actually aiming for, what I'm actually seeking is not money, but possibilities, because
Yeah.
money means possibilities. I have money so I can fly to San Francisco and meet you, right? And I have money so I can eat something. I can go traveling. I can buy some interesting books, or I can go to a museum you were mentioning earlier. So you can actually you're offering yourself more opportunities, and so maybe not rich, but getting more opportunities. What do you think would be necessary for us in Europe to change this kind of mindset as we're coming towards the end of our podcast today?
Yeah, you said it right with this hard times create hard guys. Create. I don't even know how. I forgot also how this chain continues. Don't get it. But I know which one you mean. Yeah, we're in a position where basically, yeah, we're just soft now. This is probably right, but it's a more, I would say, even a more advanced, ethically a more advanced state of a society that we are in. I often say, Germany is like after Bhutan, probably the most morally correct place in the world, right? And that's a good thing. And all these, like behind this not wanting or needing to become the richest person on the continent or whatever, it's a good moral sense probably. It's probably also good for society just socially. Uh, the problem is that we're not nurturing an elite anymore, and other places in the world do. And that makes us fall behind. Even that from a societal standpoint and a moral standpoint, it's probably much more advanced where we are. And so people are thinking about that. People can only think about their lives and work balance because we reached such a high level of wealth and social equality, right? And legal possibilities also. So
You can
that's
afford it.
advanced. So we're probably maybe Europe and Germany is the most advanced place in terms of, the resources and legal constraints for an individual person. Problem is that's not good for companies, and problem is that's not good for sustaining a wealth, right? Because other places are succeeding us and kind of overtaking us, and that has an impact. And this we don't fully anticipate, and that's an issue. But I wanted to say it's basically, yeah, it's good, but it's not good for sustaining the same level of wealth and quality of living.
Because then you have no one who is able to fight for, and you have no one who is able to continuing this wealth, and mixed with this risk adversity that you were mentioning earlier, I think it's a deadly combination.
True. And especially when our elites are becoming, are having the same properties. I see a big difference between people in Europe who have money, wealthy people. So, I mean, very wealthy people and very wealthy people in the US, for example, or in Asia. In these other places, they're very happy and eager to invest into other people who have ambitions and who might build something successful to be part of that development, to even, grow their wealth beyond that together with this. Yeah, like, Masayoshi-san also, who is always eager to invest big amounts into entrepreneurs who have very big ambitions. And we don't have such things in Europe. We have people with a lot of money who are usually very cautious on risking that money, right? Have usually very hedonistic interests by themselves. So they don't want to just risk their position. And that is another factor that is a structural problem for Europe, I would say. So we're all the same over here. We don't want to change our high quality of living, and we don't want to take any risk in losing that. And by that, we're losing it.
Yeah, because you do need to take risk to get some reward.
Sam Altman said this. I know where I need to also leave punctually, but Sam Altman said this recently. The biggest risk that you can take is not to take risk in this dynamically changing world.
I'm very happy that you took the time today. It seems definitely there needs to be a second episode. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but definitely you're not too far from me. I think it's like 30 minutes.
Correct.
We do need to have a second episode in
Let's do that.
I'm
Maybe
very
not
happy.
remotely.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you took the time, and we need to spend a little bit more time to talking about what's next for Synapticon, but that will be for another episode. This is today the 50th, and this is the last episode of Kinematic Conversations, and the next episode will be building deep tech, and you just taught us a little bit about how you build your deep tech, so I'm very thankful for that.
Well, appreciate it. It's my honor.
Then good luck to you, and talk to you soon.
Yes, talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.